Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Tami, your host today, and we are super excited. Thank you for joining us. We know that we are very early today compared to what we normally do. So we hope that you had no problems getting up earlier today to join us. So today, the first 15 minutes is just a little bit of a live hangout. We are super excited that Dr. Greger will be joining us at 8 o'clock. So 15 minutes into this video, he will come on and join us. And he has a very tight schedule, and we get him for 30 minutes. And many of you have submitted questions. I have piles of questions here that I will be addressing with Dr. Michael Greger on your behalf. If I do not get through all the questions, I apologize. This is one of the reasons why we started early, because we wanted to be sure that we could take advantage of the full 30 minutes to try to address all of your questions. So I believe we have Tiffany is here, and she's going to be helping us with the chat. And if we get through all of the questions that have already been submitted, then I will take questions from the comments. So, Tom says, share and text your friends about Dr. Greger being on this morning. You can take our YouTube link. You can click below the video on share and get our link, and then you can post the link in your favorite Facebook groups and say that we will be we will be having Dr. Greger on in 15 minutes at 8 o'clock. So 8 o'clock our time, Pacific, 10 o'clock Central, and 11 o'clock Eastern. And is Mountain just 1 hour different from us? I always get confused about Mountain time. So anyway, we're so excited about that. We also have exciting things coming up over the next month or so that we're really excited about. So next week, on October 11th through the 12th, is Prime Amazon Early Access Sale. And there are going to be some exciting things that we in the plant-based community use that will be on sale at Amazon. And Tom and I will actually be going live on October 11th in the afternoon at 3 p.m. Pacific time to share those things with you. And we also have some pretty amazing giveaways coming up. So some through Amazon and some through some of our other affiliate relationships. So here's what you guys need to know. You need to be on our mailing list. And that means that you go to our blog at www.nutmegnotebook.com. And there is a drop-down menu, and it says subscribe. It's free to subscribe. That's going to get you on our email list. And once you're on our email list, then Tom will be sending out emails telling you about the wonderful things that we have going on, the amazing giveaways, the special prices on products that you may be interested in getting. So be sure to be a subscriber. That is our best way of getting the information out to you. Now, as soon as you subscribe, you will get an email sent to you, and it will probably land in your junk email folder since we are not in your contact list. So you need to check that and then put us in your contact list. When the emails arrive, they'll go to your inbox instead of your junk folder. And that way you won't miss out on anything. And in that first email that you'll get from us, you will get some of our readers' favorite recipes. So be sure to check that out. And I think you'll enjoy them. Then on October 13th, which is next Thursday, we have Debbie Adler She's written a new book, The Mediterranean Plate, and she will be making for us pistachio biscottis. I don't know about you, but I love biscottis. So that will be really fun as well. Later in the month, we have Sia from 6D Living coming on. And in November, we have Wanda and Lisa, and we will be having Corey from Holland Bull Mill will be coming on. We're going to get a little tour of the factory with him. We're going to do a live with him, and you'll be able to ask questions about bulls. And we think that that's going to be a real fun and exciting interview to do as well. And a couple other guests that I don't have exact dates for yet, but we're working on it. And if you have ideas of who you would like to see on, feel free to email me at Tami@nutmegnotebook, and we can look into getting people on. And we still like to do hangouts. And so I'm trying to not overschedule us so that we also have time for hangouts. Somebody said the other day that they wondered why we were doing interviews. And I said, well, because people are contacting us and asking us if they can be on the show. And so here's Dr. Michael Greger.
Well, we can see his name in
We see his name. He'll be on in just a second here.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yay!
Uh-oh. All right, I gotta get a video.
Okay, got to turn your video on.
I'm worried. I'm working on it.
We hear you at least. That's exciting.
This should do it.
All right. Way to go.
Right.
Hi, Dr. Michael Greger. We're so excited to have you on our show. And we want to thank Mary from your organization for helping make this happen. And oops, we just lost him.
No, that's delayed.
Oh, that's delayed.
Yeah,
Okay,
you're
got
fine.
it.
You go by what you see there. He did. No, here
he is. Nope, we got to get him back. He's coming back.
All right, let's try this again.
Okay, we can do it. I have faith that we can do it. So for those of you who do not know, Dr. Michael Greger is the mastermind behind nutritionfacts.org, which is a science-based nonprofit organization and that he founded. And it provides free updates on the latest in nutrition research via bite-sized videos. And you guys love short videos. So if you haven't already checked him out there, please do. So thank you so much for giving us your time today. Are you on your treadmill?
I am on my treadmill, but it's a stationary treadmill.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I'm recovering from COVID.
Okay.
And have it's suffering a rare complication called sciatic mononeuropathy, where I get shooting pains down my leg.
Oh,
so I'm sadly sedentary for the moment, but hopefully we'll bounce back soon.
okay. Well, I myself have suffered from sciatic pain for a couple of years. So can you tell us what does the research say? What does the science say about what you can do to help you recover from that?
Very little. I was surprised to find out. In fact, very frustrating to treat for a doctor and patient alike. The painkillers don't work. I mean, so there's surgical options if it is actually some kind of outlet obstruction in the spine. But other than that, I mean, and in terms of post-infectious nerve inflammation, we just don't have enough information in terms of what we can do to speed it up. Usually it goes away in about within 10 days, and about half of people within a month for 75% of people, but about 20% of the people can suffer for a year or more after COVID from this kind of thing. So hopefully I'm not in that latter bunch.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. So we have questions that have been submitted from our viewers. And so we'll just get started and see how many we can get through in the 30 minutes that we have you. You know, there's been a lot.
I love that lineup of books in the back. How pretty.
I'm a big fan of yours, and I've had the great opportunity to listen to you in person. I live in Sacramento, and you have come here a few times, and I've
Nice.
had the great pleasure of getting to hear you speak in person. And a huge fan, and we use your books all the time, and we share them with our viewers as
Fantastic.
well. So, there's been a lot of information floating around recently about as we age that we need to have more protein in our diet. We're curious, and we've gotten this question from a number of people that want to know, because in the plant-based community, we usually say, as long as you're getting enough calories, and proper nutrition, eating healthy whole food plants, you're getting plenty of protein. Do we need to be concerned about this as we age, even if we're on a whole food, plant-based, healthy diet?
So the recommended intake of protein for all adult ages is 0.8 grams per healthy kilogram of body weight. And that's from the Institute of Medicine. However, there is research to suggest that over age 65, we may want to bump that up to 1 gram per healthy kilogram of body weight. So that's still so instead of getting 50 or so grams a day, that may bump it up to 60 or 70. But since most people get about 50% more than the estimated average requirement, it shouldn't be too difficult. And so my recommendation for my daily dozen checklist of all the healthiest things I encourage people to fit into their daily routine, to get servings of legumes in their daily diet, beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils. That would be the healthiest sources. And those are kind of the plant protein superstars that I encourage people to fit into their daily routine.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. We love our beans. Lynn would like to know what foods are most beneficial for lowering our LDL cholesterol.
Oh, well, so the first thing one would do to lower LDL cholesterol is to cut out the 3 food components that increase your LDL cholesterol. And that is saturated fat, and that's not just, and which is predominantly meat, dairy, and junk, but in that junk there's plant saturated fats as well. So it's coconut oil, palm kernel oil, palm oil. So staying away from saturated fat, also trans fats, which thankfully are being removed from the food supply. And the third is dietary cholesterol, found predominantly in eggs. Just by removing those 3 things, one should bring one's LDL cholesterol down to where we want it, which is under 70 for primary prevention, meaning you have not yet been diagnosed with heart disease. You're trying to prevent your first heart attack. So we want to get an LDL under 70. And so just by cutting out the animal foods and junk, the average LDL comes down to be about 68, which is perfect. But it is a bell curve, such as some people, even cutting out those LDL raising foods are still ending up higher than 70. And so then the question becomes, okay, then it's a matter of adding foods to our diet that actively pull cholesterol from our body. And this was compiled by Dr. David Jenkins, University of Toronto, into what he calls a portfolio diet. It's a portfolio of different foods that pull cholesterol out of your body through different mechanisms. And so kind of had an additive effect. And so the portfolio diet is a plant-based diet, but has specifically soluble fiber-rich foods. So that's slimy foods like oatmeal, okra, eggplant, encouraging nuts every day, encouraging soy every day. And so there's a bunch of different foods that going out of your way to eat specifically, not just a plant-based diet, but a plant-based diet enriched with some of these cholesterol-lowering foods, and that should bring everyone's cholesterol down.
Okay. And I happen to be one of those people. Before I went whole food plant-based, my LDL cholesterol was at 148. And
Yikes.
then I eliminated all those things you said to eliminate, and it dropped to 98. And I have yet to be able to get it lower than that.
Oh yeah. So you're the perfect person for trying the portfolio diet approach.
Okay.
And if you just type in LDL into nutritionfacts.org, there's all sorts of things that lower our cholesterol, such as, black cumin, which is a kind of
I use
spice,
that.
and there's all sorts of, and so even if each one chips away a few percent, you really don't have much room you don't really need that much to get yourself under 70. So yeah, so it's just about a matter of experimenting with adding different foods to your diet to pull that cholesterol even lower.
Okay, well, I'll try adding a few more things, and that should help with that. Thank you so much. Let's see. Teresa says, I'd like to ask Dr. Greger about eating whole food plant-based and its relationship to osteoporosis. What do you feel that, or actually, we know that you report on the science, not what you think or what you feel about supplementing, and what is the science on taking Fosamax long-term?
Oh, yeah, no, that's an excellent question. So the most critically important thing to do for bone health is basically it's a use it or lose it scenario, is weight bearing exercise. So I mean, whenever our heel strikes the ground when we walk, for example, it sends signals throughout our skeleton to grow, bolster their growth. Whereas we sit on a couch all day, our body's like, well, what's the point of having a skeleton if you're not going to use it? So it's like, astronauts lose 2% of their bone mass every month in space because they're not putting any pressure on their bones. Well, some people on the ground aren't putting much pressure on their bones, and similarly have that bone loss. And so it's ideally we should be doing at least an hour every day of weight bearing exercise. That's really the most important thing we do. Now, it has to be in the context of sufficient calcium, which should be at least 600 milligrams a day from whole foods, not from supplements. Mm-hmm. In fact, calcium supplements may actually increase our risk of heart disease events like heart attacks by thickening our blood. And in the context of sufficient vitamin D, which is the sunshine vitamin, which if you get sufficient sunshine, and if you don't for whatever reason, then you may want to supplement with 2,000 international units of vitamin D. So in the context of sufficient calcium, sufficient D, then weight-bearing exercise is kind of the way to go. Now, in terms of this, in terms of the drug was mentioned, Fosamax. I actually just in my my upcoming book, How Not to Age, I talk about, I don't actually have any videos right now on these osteoporosis drugs. And so I decided, it's about time I write about them. And so I did. I'm actually pulling up right now. You can get a little sneak peek. So primary drug class, treated osteoporosis is the biphosphonates, which is like the Fosamax that was mentioned, also Actonel, Boniva, Reclass. These are all in the same class. They are most effective at reducing vertebral fractures, cutting the risk of in postmenopausal women from about 2.8% down to 1.4%. So that's basically a relative risk reduction of 50%. But the absolute risk reduction is really only about 1.4%. So meaning you have to treat 71 women to prevent one from getting a fracture. Unfortunately, the diagnosis of vertebral fractures is a little wishy-washy. Depends how you define the changes on X-ray. And so the prevalence of vertebral fractures, depending on what study you look at, can be as low as 3% up to 90%. Vertebral fractures can certainly lead to back pain and reduced physical function, but only about a third are symptomatic at all. The most harmful fractures are hip fractures. And despite most of the clinical trials being funded by drug companies themselves, no primary prevention benefit has been found for hip fractures for this class of drugs. In other words, taking these drugs has not been convincingly shown to prevent fracturing your hip in the first place. However, if you have a prior fracture, that doubles your risk of breaking another bone. And so for those with a history of major fractures, these biphosphonate drugs have been shown to decrease subsequent fracture risk by about 40%, with an absolute risk reduction by about 1%. So if you treat 91 people for 3 years, you can prevent one hip fracture. And so that gives you a sense of the kind of relative benefit, and the importance of using lifestyle approaches, because there are side effects to these drugs. This something about between 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 100,000 users every year get this osteonecrosis of the jaw, where their jawbone starts to rot. It's also something called atypical femur fractures. As many as 1 in 300 users over 3 years can get a fracture in the biggest bone in their body, which is kind of ironic that you get more fractures in a drug that's trying to prevent fractures. So ideally, we should try to bolster bone health without resorting to these class of drugs.
Okay. And so, to prevent those falls, working on stability and balance as we get older, to do exercises for that would probably be beneficial then too, right?
Yeah, no, in fact, so that's more important than, people think of bone mineral density, but it's really fall risk that determines whether or not you're going to break a bone. You can have extraordinarily weak bones and never suffer a fracture because you're not falling, or you can have strong bones and fracture anyway because of fall risk. And so there's a bunch of things in terms of you're removing throw rugs, and there's like simple things you can do in your house to reduce your risk of falling, which is really that's where the money is in terms of reducing hip fracture risk.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think my husband Tom's going to pop on here.
Hello, Dr. Greger. I'm Tom. I'm Tammy's co-host. Since you guys are talking about bones, there is a question in the chat about fighting bone density issues by wearing weighted vests. Any thoughts about weighted vests?
Oh yeah, so again, that's putting extra weight on your skeleton. So the people who are skinny are at higher risk for osteoporosis, and the reason is because they're putting less strain on their skeleton. Their skeleton doesn't need to be particularly strong because it's just holding up something that's really light. Whereas if you're 50 pounds overweight, then all of a sudden you're carrying around a 50-pound backpack wherever you go. And that 50-pound backpack, people who are obese can have really strong bones, because it has to be strong bones because they're carrying away, just walking across the room. Your bones have to be really strong to maintain that weight. And so if you're skinny, one way to help bolster bone health is not just weight-bearing exercise, but extra weight. So these weighted vests, it's like as if you had 20 more pounds on your body, and so then when you go out for a walk, there's even more signal for your body to bolster bone strength. Again, use it or lose it, and that's just a sneaky trick to get your body to create even stronger bones than you even need.
Okay, that's great. I want to back up just a little bit. You were talking about supplementation of vitamin D for bone health. And we did get a question about, is it okay? Is it safe to be supplementing with vitamin D long-term?
You can certainly take too much. So that's why I encourage people not to exceed 2,000 international units a day. So it's not a matter of the more the better. You can actually start calcifying your arteries and things at exceedingly high doses, and you can get vitamin D toxicity. So I would encourage people to stick to the kind of supplemental levels that would approximate the levels you would get by getting sufficient sunshine. That's where we naturally get it. And so that's kind of the target blood levels, which you can achieve through that kind of supplementation. If you're getting sufficient sun, you don't need to supplement at all. But there's actually been some benefits associated with long-term vitamin D supplementation in randomized controlled trials to actually put it to the test.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Jeannie would like to know, she's looking for anything that she can do to help her mother who was recently diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and also what she can do herself to prevent getting Parkinson's disease.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I mean, that's actually 2 videos ago on Nutrition Facts. So Monday's video on Nutrition Facts was on Parkinson's. It was in one of my Parkinson's treatment videos. I have both prevention videos and treatment videos. In terms of prevention and diet, the single dietary factor most associated with Parkinson's disease is dairy consumption for a variety of reasons. And so I encourage people to cut down on dairy to reduce one's risk of Parkinson's disease, as well as for men to reduce one's risk of prostate cancer. I encourage people to eat nightshade vegetables like green peppers and tomatoes and things, which may also reduce one's risk of Parkinson's disease. And then in terms of treating, there's low protein diets, protein weighted diet. So you eat protein in the higher protein foods in the evening meal, because that the protein interferes with the ability of the L-dopa drug to access your brain, and so you want to take higher protein foods at night. So then when you experience the symptoms, which are movement disorder symptoms, you're sleeping, so it doesn't matter. And then there are actually certain foods that actually have L-dopa in them, which is kind of the gold standard drug you use to treat Parkinson's, which is essentially an L-dopa deficiency, because it's the death of these neurons that create L-dopa in your brain. And those foods are fava beans actually have the most, but soybeans work as well. And so by supplementing one's diet with the beans, you can actually get an improvement in symptoms. Some people use fava beans exclusively without taking drugs to control their symptoms. I mean, so it's a fascinating story. I've got a bunch of videos on it, on both preventing and treating Parkinson's. I encourage people to check it out.
Oh, that's perfect. And once again, it's food is medicine.
Food is indeed medicine.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. We have another question. Ideas to increase low iron levels through healthy foods.
Yeah, the way to improve iron absorption is to eat vitamin C rich foods with your meals. What are vitamin C rich foods? Citrus, people typically think of, but tropical fruits are also high in vitamin C, as well as bell peppers and broccoli are all high in vitamin C. And so including any of those foods with your meal. So the iron rich foods, so it'd be like legumes, whole grains, are in your stomach at the same time as the high vitamin C rich foods. And that increases the absorption of that iron. First, I encourage anyone who's anemic to make sure that the cause of their iron deficiency anemia is indeed insufficient iron intake or absorption, because there's a variety of reasons one can become anemic. You could be actually losing blood through your digestive tract, through excessive periods. You may not be making enough blood. So maybe a problem with your bone marrow. Your spleen may be sequestering too many blood cells. So there's lots of reasons people become anemic. And some people just may assume it's an iron thing, but until you know it's an iron thing, you don't want to go out of your way to increase iron absorption, because many people suffer from actually iron toxicity, excess iron, which can increase risk of a number of issues like diabetes and colorectal cancer and problems with your liver. Ideally we want to have as low iron stores as possible, because it acts as a pro-oxidant, while still maintaining adequate blood production. So you don't want to be anemic, absolutely. You want to have sufficient, but other than that, we want to have low iron stores.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Kind of along that lines too, a lot of people ask us about iodine because if they are cutting out table salt and not eating the processed foods, then where are they getting their iodine?
And they won't be, they wouldn't be getting iodine from the processed foods either. The salt that's used in the processed food industry is not iodized.
Oh,
And
interesting.
so, but absolutely, when you take out, but the primary source of iodine for many people is table salt or dairy, because the iodine containing disinfectants are used to disinfect the dairy, the udders, and it kind of leaches into the milk. And so so the iodine doesn't actually come from the cow itself, but comes from the disinfectants or the iodine supplements that they give to the cattle. And so, but if you're cutting out dairy and you're cutting out iodized salt, table salt, which I encourage everyone to do, then where are you going to get your iodine? Now, iodine is present in the soil, and so is in a variety of crops, but you never know if your crops are grown in iodide deficient soil. And so, particularly for pregnant women, where it's critically important to have sufficient iodine, I encourage people to get a green light source, a whole food source, and that would be sea vegetables. I encourage people to experiment. The people are familiar often with like nori sheets, seaweed. You can eat those like a snack. You're eating dark green leafy vegetables as a snack. Or you can there's some seaweeds that are not as seaweedy tasting, like dulse and arame. So you can get dulse flakes and sprinkle it on food. Arame is great for soups. And yeah, so I would just, the only two caveats is I encourage people not to get hijiki, which has too much arsenic. And kelp actually has too much iodine. And so unless you're using absolutely tiny doses, you can get too much.
Okay, great.
Oh, another source of iodine is there's one brand of canned beans, Eden brand. They use kombu, which is a type of kelp. They add just a little bit, just to give it just the perfect amount of iodine. And so if you do use canned beans, by using Eden brand canned beans, you're getting all the iodine you need.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and you can buy kombu, and when I make my beans in my Instant Pot, I just put a little piece of it in there. And okay, great. Thank you. Marilyn is suffering from some intense grief from losing a loved one. And she said she's not depressed, but she's sad and grieving that huge loss in her life. And she hasn't seen much written about holistic grieving. And she's wondering if there's anything that she can do with diet or exercise or anything that would help.
Oh, that's a fantastic question. I mean, what she's going through is a natural, normal process. And so, you know, we interfere with natural, normal processes to our detriment, right? I mean, we wouldn't, I mean, the grieving process is, you know, important for our social cohesion, for our future psychological health. And so the important things to know is that it will get better with time naturally. And that trying to kind of accelerate the process or somehow short circuit the process may be to one's detriment. And so it's a matter of just knowing that this is going to be kind of a long, slow process, and really just kind of valuing that connection and realizing that it's so painful because this person was loved so much. And I mean, I'm not aware of any kind of lifestyle medicine interventions that could help. Certainly, you know, if you have a problem sleeping, you know, exercise is a great way to improve sleep, and there's other ways to improve sleep. I mean, so there's like symptomatic relief, like if there's, you know, but in terms of the underlying process, it's just, you know, valuing the process and knowing that it will get, even though you don't think it's going to get better, it just does. And we evolve to be able to handle that grief. But it's an important thing to go through.
Okay, thank you so much. And, you know, our hearts go out to you, Marilyn, and our sympathies to you. Let's see. Gary says, Dr. Greger, it's clear from the research that saturated fat is the main culprit for insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. Why isn't this information given to the public and dealt with by endocrinologists?
Well, I mean, it is acknowledged by, the American Diabetes Association, for example. I mean, and it's very clear in the medical literature. But yeah, it hasn't really broken through into kind of mainstream consciousness. And so note that saturated fat that can come from one of two places, through your mouth by eating meat, dairy, and junk, and also the fat that's the visceral fat from that excess abdominal obesity. And so you could be eating a perfect diet, but still be insulin resistant, pre-diabetic, type 2 diabetes, if you have that excess abdominal fat. And so weight loss is critically important. But then you could be skinny as anything and still become insulin resistant by eating saturated fat. Either way, whether it's spilling into your bloodstream from your own fat stores, or whether it's in your bloodstream because you're absorbing it through digestion, we want to keep that saturated fat down so it doesn't get stuck, clog our liver cells and our skeletal muscle, and interferes with insulin signaling, and causes the insulin resistance, which can be measured within literally after one meal. You eat one meal high in saturated fat, and you can measure. You can see insulin resistance shoot up. So it's not something that is controversial in the scientific literature, only in the public imagination, because the concentration, they think insulin resistance, prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, they think high blood sugar levels. So you want to avoid sugar, but the high sugars are just a symptom. The cause of the high sugars is because your body can't use insulin properly. And so the cure should not be, well, let's avoid anything that raises your sugars. No, the cure should be, you should be able to eat healthy foods and not have excess sugars. How do you do that? By getting your body to react normally to the normal hormones secreted by your pancreas. How do we do that? We decrease saturated fat intake. We lose that visceral fat. And if you catch it early enough, you can actually reverse type 2 diabetes, have normal blood pressures, eating a normal diet. Excuse me, normal blood sugars, eating a normal diet.
Wonderful. Thank you. Tom has
on this subject of visceral fat, since you brought it up, Sam asked in the chat here, what is the best way to assist visceral fat loss? Calorie restriction reportedly does not reduce visceral fat, only exercise. Is that true, and why?
That is not true. That is not true. The good news about the villainous visceral fat, this is the fat underneath your abdominal musculature that's kind of bulging out your belly. It's not the flabby fat you see in the mirror. It's the fat that's infiltrating your inner organs inside your liver. And this is the fat that is the first to be lost. So that's the good news. So losing weight by any means will reduce your visceral fat first. Your body knows that's the worst fat. It's the metabolically most dangerous fat, and will cut down first. Now, by eating a plant-based diet, you can accelerate the loss of visceral fat for some reason. Plant-based eating accelerates the loss of visceral fat over other types of fat, so you get more for the same amount of caloric restriction. Inadvertent caloric restriction if you're eating as much as you want on a plant-based diet, but you're just eating such calorically dilute foods. And so, yeah, I encourage people to check out my book, How Not to Diet. I talk about the role of exercise in weight loss, which is much smaller than one is, I think, led to believe, unless you're really, doing some kind of, mountain climbing or something.
excellent. Thank you. We have another question for you. What foods beyond salt and caffeine, because she doesn't want to use those, would be helpful for people who have low blood pressure?
Well, low blood pressure, quote unquote, low blood pressure is where we want it to be. I mean, right? We don't want normal blood pressure. Normal blood pressure in a society where it's normal to drop dead of a stroke, that's not a good thing. And so right now, they say, the cutoff for hypertension is, 130/90. But so if you're 129/89, that's supposedly normal, but still increases your risk of very serious diseases. And so that's why we really want not just normal blood pressure, we want ideal blood pressure. It's about 110/70. So that's where we want to go. Now you can call that low blood pressure if you want. No, that's the ideal blood pressure for our species. That's where we don't die of blood pressure related causes. Now so the only reason we would ever be concerned about low blood pressure is if we actually had symptomatic low blood pressure. So we had such low blood pressure that we, for example, would get dizzy, lightheaded when we stood up. This so-called certain type of hypotension. It's called orthostatic hypertension. And in which case, there's things you can do like drinking water is probably the most important thing to do. And so staying hydrated would probably be the healthiest way to deal with it. But you want to make sure you want to treat the cause. And so I encourage anyone who's actually symptomatic with low blood pressure to seek advice from a cardiologist to actually figure out what's going on, because there actually may be some underlying disease process.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Here's a good question that comes up quite frequently. A lot of us like to batch prep our food for the week. And if we cut up our vegetables, our carrots, our bell peppers, our onions ahead of time,
You're making me hungry.
I know. Are they losing a lot of nutrients? And what about cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and Brussels sprouts and cabbage and cauliflower? Do they lose their sulforaphane benefits after a few days when they've been cut? And if so, do we have to increase using mustard powder with them to up
wow. Yeah. So, well, as this questioner probably knows, the pre-chopping of those cruciferous vegetables actually increases sulforaphane production. And so you'd want them to be pre-chopped. And so, but then the question becomes, well, wait a second, does it somehow wane with time? And the answer is no. So getting like those bags of pre-chopped, collard greens or kale or broccoli, it's kind of the work has been done for you. Now, of course, this isn't the case with frozen, because when you frozen greens go through a boiling process to deactivate the enzymes that will produce sulforaphane, so they don't rot in your freezer. But that's where the mustard powder would come in. If you're using frozen cruciferous vegetables, cook with them all you want. Add a little either raw cruciferous vegetables, like you can scrape on some radish, or put some shreds of purple cabbage on top, or some little arugula or something. And that would have the enzyme, which then would activate all the precursors found in the frozen and then cooked vegetables. Or the mustard powder is another convenient way to do that. So whichever way gets you to cook to eat the most vegetables is the way to do it. And if pre-chopping gets you to eat more vegetables through the week, that's the most important. I did talk about I did do a video about pre-chopped vegetables, concerns about endotoxin production. The fact, the growth of bacteria on chopped vegetables. As soon as we open up a vegetable, then it accelerates it kind of going bad. And so after a few days, for example, chopped onion loses some of its ability to I forget the indicator that they were looking at, whether it was arterial function or something, but it did seem to lose it. And we think that's because just the buildup of these bacteria with certain types of bacteria have these components of the cell walls called endotoxins, which are typically you only think of as being found concentrated in animal foods like ground meat. But if you chop up vegetables and leave them for a couple of days, even in the fridge, you can have the buildup of the bacterial growth, which may indeed impair some of the healthful properties. It doesn't have a negative effect like it does in the meat and dairy, but you lose some of that beneficial effect. So ideally, things would be either you chopped fresh, or you can cook it. So it's just a problem with bacterial contamination. So if you do a big batch prep of chili or whatever, and you cook it, then then you're killing off those bacteria. And so then you keep it in the fridge, and you kind of eat it throughout the week. But rather than fresh produce being pre-chopped and just sitting there, it would not be as good as fresh or cooked.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. But if we batch prep it so that we will for sure eat it, then we're good to go. Okay,
That's
I see
fantastic. And I do that every week. Absolutely.
Okay, and do you batch prep fresh vegetables as well?
So no, I cook everything. I mean,
You cook everything.
usually I'm cooking a big thing of whatever. And so like pasta sauce, I just make a huge amount of pasta sauce. And then I just have a whole big spaghetti pot worth in the fridge, and then can just ladle it out on, in fact, I used to make a whole bunch of pasta too, the whole wheat pasta, and just keep it in the fridge and take out some and microwave it with some, big thing. I don't know. I'm just thinking what's in my fridge right now. And there's a big thing of spaghetti sauce with all sorts of wonderful vegetables. And yeah, it's almost
Okay.
lunchtime. In fact,
Yeah,
I've got to run. If there's one last question.
Well, I was just going to ask you to please give us a plug about your How Not to Age book, please.
Oh, very exciting. Unfortunately won't be out until December 2023, over a year away, but I swear it's going to be worth it. It's going to be months of editing and fact checking. It's this monstrosity. It's massive, but it's just got so much good information. And we're going to distill it down and into something a little bit more manageable. And I really think it's going to be it's going to be everything on longevity research that there is to print, basically.
Okay.
And it took a little longer than I thought it would, but that's just because there's so much good, juicy information out there. So I encourage, I hope people enjoy it, and looking forward to seeing people afterwards. I'll go around, do a book tour, and hope to come back to Sacramento.
Oh, well, I hope so. And we'd love to have you back on to promote your book. So
fantastic. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, we can't thank you enough, Dr. Greger. You're just this walking medical encyclopedia, and we appreciate what you do so much. Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Okay, bye for now. Oh, that was awesome, you guys. So I was furiously taking notes, and I'll go back and rewatch it so that I make sure that I get everything. I know we did not get to all of the questions.
I was writing them down in case there was time, or in case we got a bonus half hour. But
I know I was wishing.
Just on the off chance he had more time, I was writing your questions down. I did slide in a couple of your questions that were just spot on, relevant to the conversation. So
yeah, so I did choose to, I was leaning towards asking the medical questions, because a lot of the questions about fruits and vegetables and things like that, I thought, we can
we'll get from his printed work.
Yeah, we can get from printed work that he has done, or a search on the internet. But I did want to ask the medical questions. So I did give preference to those. And we did know that he had COVID, and that was, and he brought it up.
That's why our show got canceled 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's why our show got canceled.
Well, we didn't cancel the show. We did the show.
It got, that's why his appearance got moved to today.
I don't know if we said at the time, I sent out the email on that the day before. Yeah, the day before. And then like 1 hour later, I spotted the email from his administrator that he was not going to be able to make the appointment. So yeah, timing wasn't great on that. Right.
So anyway, it was great. He had so much wonderful information. The recording of this, of course, will be available as soon as we are done. And so if you want to go back and listen to it again in order to, hear all of those answers again, that, please feel free to do that because he gave so much good information.
I-51 Farms wants to know if there's a whole food plant-based way to clone Dr. Greger.
I wish there was, right? We all need one of him in our communities. So anyway, and he only does 30-minute interviews because he is in such high demand that what he does is he schedules like multiple of them back to back on the same day when he's home because he does travel a lot. And so we're just grateful that we got in on 30 minutes. So Mary, if you're watching, thank you so much for helping us have Dr. Greger on. It was like a huge joy. Okay, so we do still have some other
Are there some questions that we can actually discuss with the
that we can discuss.
Okay.
So Kathy wanted to know what the best method for cleaning fruits and vegetables would be. And, so people have some different ways that they like to do this. I usually just use cold water and a vegetable brush and just scrub things really well, like my potatoes and carrots and, things like that, and lettuce and greens. I just use cool water. Some people like to add a little bit of vinegar to their water to soak things. I have read that apple cider vinegar works really well for like cleaning strawberries, and it will actually help them last longer in your fridge. There are also some vegetable washes, fruit and vegetable washes. Trader Joe's sells one in their produce department. And so you can go that route as well. So hopefully that helps you with that. And if anybody has anything, we have a spammer in the chat. I see.
Oh, we've blocked him.
Oh, okay. And if anyone has any other suggestions or wants to share in the chat how you clean vegetables, let us know. We did get a question about oil. We know that it isn't healthy to eat. Is it okay to use it on your skin? And yes, it is okay. Like, you can use coconut oil or different types of oil on your skin, and it does not get absorbed into your bloodstream. So it is okay to do that. And this one I hadn't heard of before. Someone says, I eat organic white button mushrooms almost daily. I found out that they're grown on a substrate of poultry litter and feathers. And that makes me think, are they full of arsenic? And am I still vegan? So I did look up that made me curious. I don't eat white button mushrooms, but it made me curious about that. And so I did look up, and I did find out that a lot of manure is used for in the soil that is used for growing mushrooms. And I don't have an answer for you. So if anyone is an expert in mushrooms, and I know that Robin, if Robin Soul is watching, she is an expert on mushrooms, and boy, we'd like to know more about that.
I would weigh in that the fertilizer part probably is not an issue. The feathers would be a different question.
Yeah.
So far as being vegan, but
right,
the whole planet is fertilized with animal droppings of one sort or another. But not necessarily taking off their feathers or their hair. So
yeah. So that was really disturbing to read that. It was like, oh my goodness. And then there was a question about water. I did do a video about water. Tom, maybe you can find that video on, we did one of our lives, and the topic was all about water, and maybe you can find that video and link to it. You don't want to get dehydrated. What they say is when you start to feel thirsty, you're already dehydrated. So we do want to try to prevent that from happening, because water helps so many parts of our body work. We are like 90% water. So we want to make sure that we get plenty of water every day. It should be your beverage of choice. Water is better than decaf coffee, decaf tea.
Was it the beverage video?
Yeah, it was a live show that we did, but I talked it wasn't all that long ago, I don't think. And I talked all about water. Now, I have to say, because we eat a whole food plant-based diet, the more raw fruits and vegetables that we are eating, the more water content we're getting, because they have a very high water content. Let's look at watermelon, for instance. If I eat that in the evening, I have to get up, couple times during the night to use the restroom, because watermelon is so full of water. So, even though we do eat a whole food plant-based diet, we do need more water. Did you find it?
Hungry or thirsty?
Yep, that's the one. Hungry or thirsty. I talked all about water in that. So, and oftentimes we think we are hungry when really we are thirsty.
I'll show them. Okay. So the middle one there, where she's pointing at hungry or thirsty, I'm going to put a link in the show notes for that one.
Great. Thank you. All right. So, yeah, there were just a couple questions that had been submitted to us that we didn't get to. I wanted to ask him a little more, doggone it. We just didn't get to everything, but so we got to a lot, and it was fun and it was exciting. And let me check the chat here for any questions.
I have a number of questions from before that we might be able to discuss a couple of these.
Yeah,
because I was writing
sure,
it down.
sure.
So,
Let's do.
Okay. I don't know. Have you had any dialogue with folks along the way? This is from Cheryl. The best way in terms of food choices to lower triglycerides. She's on a whole food plant-based diet, but her triglycerides remain high. Have you had to deal with that yourself?
I have a couple years ago, it was when I was having all the sciatic nerve problems, when I had all of my, when I'm going through periods of chronic pain. What we have noticed when we look at my charts from my lipid panels is that my LDL cholesterol, which is the lousy cholesterol, and my triglycerides increases. And when this last time that I got my blood work done, my triglycerides were back to normal, and my LDL cholesterol went back to my normal, which has been around between 98 and 108, not 908, 98 and 108. And so for me, I know that stress, especially being in pain, chronic pain, really takes a toll on mine. So as far as reducing it, I can't say exactly for sure which thing has helped, because I do multiple things that Dr. Greger suggests. So I do use the black cumin seeds, the freshly ground black cumin seeds that he recommends, the Nigella, I believe they're called. And you could grab those. Do you want to grab the bag?
Sure.
From the cupboard there? Because I'm perched here with my pillows and stuff. And so I do that. And then the oat groats, I use the, yeah, but if the bag up on top so they can see the bag, honey. Great. Thank you so much. So this is something that's super easy to do. Now, it does not taste like cumin. To me, it tastes more like black pepper, like ground black pepper. And you do need to have it be ground. If you ingest the whole seeds, I've been told that it can cause stomach upset. So I have a grinder for it. And I get these on Amazon. They're in our Amazon store. So we have a link below the show with our Amazon affiliate store.
Yeah, say Amazon.shop.com. And go to the pantry
Yeah,
category.
it's in the pantry category. So this way you only need like a 1/4 teaspoon of these a day. And I learned about these in Dr. Greger's How Not to Diet book. It's good for weight loss and cholesterol and blood pressure and all kinds of things. So, and this is really easy to do. And then the other thing I do is I eat oat groats. And so I use those in place of brown rice. I have a video, my friend Sharon McRae taught me how to make them in the Instant Pot so that they would come out more like brown rice instead of a porridge. And so I have a video showing her technique, how to do that. And they're kind of a little bit chewy and a little bit of a nutty flavor. I absolutely love them. The other night, Tom used them instead of rice, and he is a big rice lover. And we had those with Mexican food, and he loved them, and they're so filling. And so just incorporating oats also into your diet can really help. And I like oat groats because and I explain it all in the video. So watch the video, oat groats, what are they and how to make them. And so I've done that. And then also the amla powder, Dr. Greger talks about it for helping to reduce your LDL cholesterol. And it is really bitter. If you make green smoothies, you can put a little bit in your green smoothies. You'll need fruit in those green smoothies to counteract the bitterness of the amla powder. And then I also would blend it with hibiscus tea because it makes it more palatable. And so those are 3 easy things that you can do that you can incorporate into your diet, like on a daily basis in order to help. And then I think that there is an amla tea also. If you look that up, there is an amla tea that you can also get. And you just want to make sure that it doesn't have any added sugar to it. So someone's asking, are these black sesame seeds? No, they are not sesame seeds. They are black cumin seeds. It's called Nigella sativa is what it is called. What it says on the package is protein, monosaturated fat, and dietary fat, fiber, boy, I can't talk today, as well as vitamins B, E, and iron are just a few of the nutrients that Nigella sativa, black cumin seeds, contain. They have a rich history of usage in Indian and civilizations as food and medicine. They are traditionally used in Ayurveda as a treatment for many ailments and used as a spice in Indian and Middle Eastern cuisine. They're also delicious topping for flatbreads, salads, and vegetables.
I did drop a link into the show notes under items mentioned in this video that I put up near the top. And then I just dropped a quick link in the chat if somebody wants to jump and look at them now, but they're in the show notes for those that want to look later.
And I chose this particular brand because when I was researching them, so many of the brands, people would say, read the reviews, and people would say, a particular brand had little bugs in it and smelled rancid when they got them and all kinds of things. And this particular brand, I do trust, the Terrasol brand. I've bought many different products from them. This is my second bag of the black cumin seeds, and they have, no bad odor to them. And I have not detected any debris or bugs or anything like that in these. So, but no, they are not black sesame seeds. They are black cumin seeds, Nigella sativa. And then I just have a pepper grinder that I keep them in, and I just grind them as I go to use them. Okay, what else do you have, Tom? Are you on screen?
I am now.
Yay.
Okay, earlier during the chat when we had Dr. Greger here, this was directed at him, but you can tackle it. I don't know the answer. Jennifer says, do you eat okra or like okra? Does it have any whole food plant-based, specific benefits? I'm not aware.
Okay, so I have not been a fan of okra. It's not anything that I grew up eating. I know that a lot of people in the South grew up eating okra because it's very popular there. I know that my dad really likes okra and he's from Mississippi, but it's not something. I think I've only had it as an adult, maybe like once or twice in food that somebody else has made. I've never bought it and made it myself because I always thought it was really slimy. Do you like okra?
I don't really have any experience with it to
Your mom,
testify.
it wasn't anything that your mom
No,
made
I didn't grow up
either.
with that. So it's not
Yeah.
part of my culinary environment at all. So,
Okay.
So I'm not qualified to answer that question. That's why I tossed it to you. I can handle part of the next couple of questions. There was a question during when we were talking about bone density and stuff.
Yeah.
And he was talking about, we were having a dialogue that weight vests, do have some benefit, especially if you're a trim person and don't have your own weight to carry around.
Yes.
I would vote for the weight that you can remove rather than the weight that stays on you all the time.
That's right.
So
good point.
I was tempted to jump in there, but I didn't want to be a smart aleck.
Oh yeah, you always want to be a smart aleck.
Rebounders, those little mini trampolines. There was a question that are they helpful? And they may well be. We don't have one, but I will tell you that at my current state of being, I would be afraid of an accident. I would be afraid of hitting it wrong and popping off to the side and breaking that very hip that we're trying to protect.
So some of them do have a bar that you can hold on to, and they are supposed to be good for bone health.
Yeah, anytime you're putting reasonable and healthy stress on your bones, it does make them stronger.
Yeah.
So
okay, so since you've got questions there, can I ask a couple that are on my screen right now so I don't lose them because you've got those written down?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll bounce back and forth. So Karen says, is the Amla brand in your Amazon pantry list? It is not, because I believe that I bought it at Whole Foods or at my health food store. But when we get off, I can look at the brand and see if it's on Amazon, and then I can add it for you because it's a name brand, but I can't think of it at this time. And then let's see. Jennifer said, how do you store the cumin seeds? In the refrigerator? No. It says right on it, just to store, refrigeration not required, store in a cool, dark, dry place. So we have a cabinet where we keep all of our herbal teas. And so I just keep it in that cabinet. Light doesn't get to it. It has a solid door on it. So that's how I do that. I-58 Farm says there is a grinder called FENA that has interchangeable pods you can load with different spices. It works okay for me with the Nigella sativa. Thank you for that. I'm going to look at that FENA for grinding spices. That sounds great because there's other things that I would like to grind, but I have this one's dedicated to this. And you guys, I just like, if I make a salad, I put this on my salad. If I steam vegetables, I put it on that. If I'm having a bowl of soup, I'll just add some of this to the top of it, and it works great. Okay. Angela says, check with the brain doctors on whether a rebounder is safe. I recall the Shiraz's being on the fence about them. Oh, that's interesting. There's always more to learn, isn't there? Okay, Tom. Let's do your other.
Yeah, I can see where if you were too aggressive, you could be slamming your brain around inside your skull casing.
Yeah,
so
could be.
But if you bend your knees a little bit, you could reduce the impact of that. So
it's true.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's like many things, there's a point to where it may be beneficial, but then if you go too far, it may not be beneficial.
Yeah.
So anyway, there was a question during Dr. Greger's visit that I can address from my own personal experience. This is not medical advice, but Vi asked about cholesterol, having gone on a cholesterol or on a whole food plant-based diet and having a dramatic drop in cholesterol levels from like 183 combined down to 139, LDL 91 to 71, HDL 65 to 49. And the question was, is the 49 too low for the HDL? I went through exactly the same conversation with my doctor when I went plant-based. He even was scratching, and actually my numbers were quite similar, a little bit higher to begin with. I think I was like 195. It dropped down to 118. He says, well, your cholesterol numbers are really gone down, but their ratio is perfect. So, you didn't mention what your ratio is. That could be a conversation with your doctor, but it's not your body. One of the plant-based doctors says your body makes the cholesterol that it needs. The problem with standard American diet is it adds a whole bunch of additional cholesterol that our body didn't make, nor does it need. So, and everybody genetically is different on how much cholesterol their body manufactures. Tammy's and mine are quite different from each other. So there's a ratio component to your question, and that's a discussion to have with your doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I will tell you that when my LDL cholesterol did climb and my triglycerides climbed up a little bit when I was having chronic sciatic nerve pain, I did talk to a plant-based cardiologist and showed him my lipid panel results. And he said, based on the fact that I was SOS free and eating a stellar diet and not overweight, that if I was his patient, he would not be worried about it because knowing how I was eating. And so that gave me some peace of mind. And then someone else had sent me some information. She had heard Dr. Esselstyn speaking and talking about, how some people just have naturally a higher LDL cholesterol level. Some of us just have bodies, because our bodies produce LDL cholesterol, and some of us just produce more than others. And mine certainly produces a lot more than Tom's does, because as horribly as he ate before we went whole food plant-based, his LDL cholesterol should have been through the roof, and it was not. So anyway, and in that conversation, I guess Dr. Esselstyn was talking about how, you kind of have to look at the individual. Where did they start and where are they now? And, take those things into consideration. But there's certainly all these little things that we can do diet-wise to help us reduce it and, try to get sleep. I mean, it's all of those components are very important. Reduce our stress, get plenty of sleep, have a stellar diet, exercise. I mean, it's all of the things combined that we need to do. I did see somebody asked, and this is moving so fast, do you think Dr. Greger was suggesting rolled oats instead of oat groats because they're slimier? Well, as far as nutrition goes, so there's good, better, and best. So rolled oats would be a good choice. And then steel cuts oats would be better than the rolled oats. And then oat groats would be the best. And why is that? Okay, the one that takes the less amount of time to cook is going to be the rolled oats because they are more processed. So those have been steamed and then they've been rolled, and the quicker they cook, the quicker they have an impact on your glucose in your blood, because the quicker they cook, the quicker they digest. So the steel cut oats are going to have less glycemic impact on you. They'll be lower on the glycemic index. They take longer to cook. They take longer to digest. Then we move up to oat groats, and that is where all they have done is removed the exterior hull that was on the groat, the oat groat, when it was growing, they take the longest to cook. They take the longest to digest. So that means they're going to stick with you longer. You're going to feel fuller when you eat them. You probably even eat less of them because they are very, very filling and they're very chewy. Those rolled oats are really easy to eat, right? Because when they get wet, they pretty much dissolve. The steel cut oats they're a good choice. They still have a lot of texture to them, a lot of bite to them. And then the oat groat itself is the longest to cook. It's going to take the longest to digest. And I find them to be the most filling. They are all water soluble fiber. So they all collect up that cholesterol in your bloodstream and help remove it. So the best choice would be the oat groat.
Jennifer's asking, where do you get the oat groats? Where do we get them?
We get them from Amazon, and they should be in our pantry store. And it has been up and down with availability since the pandemic. And I did have to buy a different brand this last time. So if you go to our order history, you'll see that I ordered a different brand.
I'm on it.
And so Tom will look for that and he will add the one that I just purchased. He will add that to our Amazon store. I do like to buy organic. If you have celiac, you need to make sure that when you're getting oats, that they are certified gluten-free. Now, here's the thing.
You pick?
Yeah, that's the one that I had to buy.
Okay.
That's the one that I had to buy most recently. Yeah. The oats are naturally gluten-free, but they can get contaminated in the facilities where they are packaged. So if they share equipment with other grains that have gluten in them, like barley or rye, then even though they clean them, there could be some cross-contamination. I don't have to have gluten certified. I have a gluten sensitivity, but it isn't so strong that like regular oats, even if they maybe have been processed on shared equipment, I don't have any effect from them, at least not at this point. So, but I do like to buy organic oats. And you guys, you have to know that the cost of oats is going up. So we buy a 25-pound bag. Yeah, it has gone up. We buy a 25-pound bag of rolled oats, organic rolled oats at Winco, which is a local grocery store here. And I think, some of you have Wincos where you live, and it almost doubled in price in the last couple of months. And so because of the drought, that's caused a real problem with the growing of oats, and the crop sizes are smaller and different things have been happening. And so the cost of oats is going up. And then I also recently read that the cost of garbanzo beans is going to really go up. And there's going to be a bit of scarcity probably of garbanzo beans. So you might want to load up while they're available and while they're still at a reasonable price. And the garbanzo beans, that was a problem because of was it the drought or maybe it was the drought. Do you remember was it
2 years? It's kind of been the same thing with the oats. There's been 2 years of dry weather, in particular in Canada, was a problem with the oats, but garbanzo beans are getting caught up in that as well.
Yeah.
So although we saw plenty on the shelf last week.
Yes. Yeah.
So
anyway,
we did buy a couple
if you cook
of
your own,
flats.
we did buy some canned garbanzo beans. And if you do cook your own garbanzo beans, you just might want to get a big 10 or 20 pound bag of them and lay them in, because the drought is going to cause problems with supplies. Okay, let's see. Yeah, there's two brands that should be in our pantry of the oat groats, you guys. So Tom just added the one that I most recently purchased because I couldn't get the brand that I had been buying. They were out of stock of it. And then there's also Shiloh Farms is a online source, and I do buy a lot of grains from them. And they have a sprouted buckwheat that I really like. And buckwheat groats are really good as well. And they are gluten-free, naturally gluten-free. And we like to take the sprouted buckwheat groats, and they're kind of nutty. And we like to sprinkle those over the top of our ice cream that we make in our Ninja CREAMi, which, you guys, I do have a new recipe coming out for a watermelon lime sorbet. So we had just plain watermelon sorbet at Chef AJ's house a few weeks ago. And then I had some leftover watermelon. And so I used my my watermelon popsicle recipe, and just made it in the Ninja CREAMi. Oh my goodness. Yeah, you guys are going to like it. So we did do a video, and that will be up soon. Kitty Mommy says, when Dr. Greger was talking about eating more slimy foods like oatmeal, okra, and eggplant, do you think he would recommend rolled oats rather than oat groats because they're slimier? I don't, because the oat groat is actually healthier to have than the rolled oats, because the rolled oats are more processed. And anytime you take a grain and you cut it, you are going to decrease the cooking time, and you're going to increase how long it takes. You are going to decrease the amount of time that it takes to digest, and it's going to have a bigger impact on your glycemic level in your blood. So if we can, that's why, like, eating the oat groat is better than eating the oat flour. The oat flour is very processed, and it's going to digest extremely quickly, and it's going to increase your blood glucose quickly. And when we have those spikes of high, when it drops, then we can feel that for some of us, that our blood sugar has spiked and then dropped. And that can also trigger cravings for those of us who are very sensitive to that. So that's why eating the whole grain as opposed to a highly processed grain is much more favorable. And, better for us for weight loss, because we're going to eat less of the whole grain because it's going to be more satisfying and filling than eating the very highly processed grain. And I'm not saying that old-fashioned oats or rolled oats are highly processed, but when you look at the difference between those and still cut and the oat groats, there is a big difference. Okay. Yes, the oats that I buy, Susan wants to know, are the Oats You Buy Organic? Yes, I do buy organic. We do try to buy all organic produce and grains. And we know that that's not possible for everyone. When we were in the Midwest, it was very difficult to find a lot of organic produce when we went to the grocery store, even a high-end grocery store. I was shocked at the lack of organic availability there. So it's just something that Tom and I do. We feel like it's important for us, and our daughter wants her children to eat all organic food. And so because we have them so often and we cook so much for them and we share food with them, we try to make sure that everything is organic. That does not mean that it's completely pesticide free. As we learned, I just lost his name, the doctor that we interviewed from back east.
Oh, Dr. Ron Weiss?
Yes, Dr. Ron Weiss said, that he thinks we should eat as much organic food as we can. But when we are traveling, we certainly do use the list of Dirty Dozen foods, Dirty Dozen fruits and vegetables, and the Clean 15. So, there are some things that you can get that won't have a high pesticide level, and some things that have a very high pesticide level, if they are conventionally grown, and we try to avoid those. So berries, peppers, things that test for a very high pesticide level, we try to eat only organic. We know if we go to a restaurant, that one meal probably isn't organic, and but we don't eat out very often. Okay. I do not have, TS wants to know suggestions for cooking the groats in the slow cooker or stovetop. I do not have one for you. The only way I've had them turn out good for me is the way I want them to be, like rice, like a pilaf that I can fluff with a fork, is to cook them in the Instant Pot. So I'm so sorry.
There's a dedicated video for that.
There is,
Yeah,
and there's also a blog post with the instructions that you can
So if
print.
you just search Nutmeg Notebook, oat
Yeah.
groats, both will probably come up in that search.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Let's see.
While you're looking there, I have during the show, or during the time with Dr. Greger, J.K. Samples had asked, are there any new large scientific studies on the whole food plant-based lifestyle, basically on the horizon? Those of us that have been in the community for a while keep thinking, we have this knowledge base and we want to share it, and we don't understand why the rest of the world isn't clearly educated on the opportunity for health with the whole food plant-based diet.
Yep.
And this question comes up a lot. It's a frustration for those of us that are in the business of sharing about a whole food plant-based diet. And I'm not aware of any just around the corner studies, but if you take a look at if there's a study and it tells people something is good and or bad for them, they're still going to follow by and large their habits. Take a look at the cigarette industry. We know that tobacco is bad for people, but yet it persists in the world. So and bad foods, animal foods, are likely going to persist in the same way. What is going to make a change is commercially, the sea change in the environment is going to come where some company somewhere can have a product that is going to turn a profit that serves the plant-based lifestyle. We're seeing that now. Just in the last 5 years, we've seen a lot of new plant-based products come on the market. The grocery store shelves keep having to widen even further their plant-based fake meat counters, unfortunately. Their plant-based fake cheese displays are getting wider and bigger. On a positive note, although it's not all good stuff, but the plant milks cabinet space is increasing dramatically with the variety of plant milks available commercially. Not that they're all good for you. Cleaner is better on that. The one we've talked about is the Joy almond milk and other nut milks that they produce, and they're just the nuts. There's nothing else added there. And you can search Nutmeg Notebook plant milk, and that video will probably come up. But my point is that where a company can produce a product that fits the niche market of whole food plant-based, that's what's going to keep driving change in the world and with the environment. Not all necessarily good. There's a plethora of the protein powders now. Pea protein powder, all kinds of protein. We get contacted weekly by some plant-based protein powder company that wants us to talk about their protein powder. We, being whole food plant-based, as our core dialogue, don't sign up for those. So it's where it commercially is what's going to create the change over time, where companies can get behind products that serve the need, and that there is a demand, which is where we come in. We can help educate and help create demand for healthy whole food plant-based products, and perhaps drive the conversation that way.
And our buying choices in the marketplace. those make a big difference. And as the plant-based community grows and, we're not buying all that processed stuff, and we're not buying the processed meats and even the plant-based substitutions. I think those are good for people who are transitioning, and they're certainly better for the animals and the environment than people going for the animal-based things, but they're also, not healthy, which is something. Oh, now somebody shared that the problem with the garbanzo beans, and I thought this was it, but I was getting that confused with my oats, is that they were grown in Ukraine, and Ukraine is not growing garbanzo beans right now, and also too much rain where they were growing in the US. And so that has affected the crops. So, thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it. I lost who it was that gave us that. Oh, but it was,
so the oats are a Canada story, but the garbanzos are a Ukraine story.
yes.
Yeah, such a global economy we live in.
It is, isn't it? Okay. Well, I think that's about it.
So
yeah. So you guys, thanks for sticking with us. I only intended to go for an hour, but we had lots to talk about. So remember, please, if you are not signed up on our mailing list, please do, because we have some amazing giveaways that you are not going to believe that will be coming up, and you're going to need to be a subscriber in order to hear about them and know how to participate. For those, like, we are just like blown away at what's coming up. Next week on the 11th and the 12th is Amazon's Prime Early Access Sale. And we will be doing a show on the 11th in the afternoon at 3 p.m. Pacific time. That will be 5 o'clock Central and 6 o'clock Eastern time. On Thursday, October 13th, we'll be back here at our usual 9 a.m. Pacific, 11 Eastern with Debbie Adler. She has a new book out, The Mediterranean Plate, and she is going to be making pistachio biscottis for us. Won't that be nice? We have Sia from 60 Living coming up later in the month. And in November, we have Wanda and Lisa from National Health Association. And we have a couple other people that we don't have firm dates for, but we will be giving those to you soon. And we're super excited about everything that we've got coming up, and crazy busy.
Yeah. There was a question in the chat earlier about the early access Prime days. You do have to be a Prime member for that.
Yes.
And if you want to go to nutmegnotebook.com/shop/nutmegnotebook. I didn't say that right. Amazon.com/shop/nutmegnotebook. There were way too many nutmeg notebooks in there. And then take a look at the top of the tab where you can become a Prime member. Prime Day deals, the early access Prime Day deals. This is Amazon's way of dealing with potential economic slowdown. So they're having kind of an extra early access Prime Day for Prime members. It is for Prime members to get those Prime deals.
Right.
And they are sponsoring 2 rather significant giveaways on our channel. And that's on our, to be clear, our Amazon Live channel that you get to by clicking live streams in the upper left-hand corner, or following the link that I provide to you in the newsletter and the email notice that Tami mentioned if you sign up at nutmegnotebook.com.
That's right. So give us a thumbs up, subscribe here, go over to Nutmeg Notebook and subscribe there, get on our email list. That way you won't miss all the amazing things that are going to be coming up, and the speakers, the guests that we'll be having on, and we've been shooting new videos, cooking videos, and so we
just need the guy to
the guy's got to edit them. Who's that guy? I got to talk to that guy.
That guy upstairs.
I got to get that edit guy rolling on that. So anyway, lots of fun stuff coming up. Thanks so much for joining us. Thank you, Tiffany, for being here and helping us moderate
Randy was
today.
here too, working hard.
Randy, thank you for being here as well. We'll see you all next week. Until then, be safe. I'm Tami,
And I'm Tom.
and we help you get healthy and stay healthy one meal at a time. Bye for now.